Hello and welcome to AirgunWeb.com, your home for honest, real-world airgun reviews, where we bring you the facts, not fluff. My name is Rick Utzler, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we look at one of the industry's leading airguns. Now sporting a brand new trigger, the RWS 34 has been the mainstay for many airgunners for a very long time. Now I ordered our model with the RWS double lockdown mount, but that was very soon replaced with a two-piece AccuShot heavy-duty mount. We'll get to that a little later. For this review, I'm using the brand new 3-12x40 AO MD IR scope from Leapers. This is not even on the market yet, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to introduce it to you today. Price and availability is still to be announced, but I'll make sure to post it on Twitter and Facebook when I hear more. For now, let's go ahead and take a good close-up look at this rifle. The RWS 34 Classic definitely lives up to its name. Its simple lines and truly ambidextrous design makes it suitable for shooters at virtually any level, righty or lefty. The hardwood stock is as clean as they come and feels very good when pulled to the shoulder. The RWS 34 comes with great front and rear fiber optic sights, with the rear sight being fully adjustable for windage and elevation. If you're a fan of traditional open sight shooting, you'll really love the RWS Model 34. I really need a scope, however, so I asked Leapers if they would let me try the brand new 3-12x40 AO MD IR scope. The 3-12 variable zoom is my favorite on an airgun, and I'm thrilled to see it in a 1-inch tube AO model. I'm not sure what pricing will be yet, but I hope it will be close to their other scopes along these lines. The real jewel of the RWS 34 is the redesigned trigger, now named the T06. This is by far the best trigger short of the TX or R9 that I've tested so far. It reminds me a lot of the trigger I have on my Benjamin Marauder. With all the RWS 34 had going for it, accuracy proved elusive at first, but with the right hold, sturdy scope mounts, and of course the right pellets, things finally all came together, and I'm very happy with the results. Now let's talk about cocking, loading, and shooting the RWS Model 34. This whole review really reminded me of a saying my dad uses quite often: education costs time and money. It doesn't matter where you get your education, whether at a college or at the School of Hard Knocks, it still costs time and money. Well, the RWS 34 Classic took me to school on many fronts. First of all, and I should know better, always get the 10 for 10 service when you order a gun. That's lesson one. Just because it's a European Springer does not mean that they'll never have a gun with a problem. Our 34 arrived and it was very stiff and difficult to cock. Alright, that happens. They can come in pretty stiff sometimes. After about 100 rounds, it wasn't getting any easier, and in fact it was getting a little harder and developed this dreaded honk. It sounded like a Christmas goose that was headed to the woodshed. Every time I cocked the gun, I'd get this honking sound. Well, that honking turned into what sounded like sandpaper inside the chamber. This is not a good thing. So I dropped a couple drops of Crossman's chamber lube down the transfer port, and that helped with the honking a little bit, but the grinding was still there. So I hit the spring with a little spray silicone. I didn't want to tear down the gun if I didn't have to, and that did help some, but it was still just not right. Now, at this point, I would advise a customer to just send it back and get a new one. But I figured it was worth a look under the hood, and I'm very glad that I took that route. I'm not going to get into all the specifics today, but suffice it to say, the 34 is a very easy gun to work on, probably one of the things that makes it so popular. Anyway, once I had the gun apart, I found the problem. My 34 was dry as a bone. So with some trial and error and some helpful advice for some friends, I found the right amount of M2M paste to use on the parts and reassembled the gun. While it was apart, I also took apart the barrel joint and greased that properly as well. Now with the 34 working the way it should, I could finally get to work. And what a difference. The honking was gone, the grinding was gone, and I was starting to get some really good accuracy. That was until our RWS double lockdown mount failed and the scope started sliding around. Time for some more education. In short, the base of RWS's new mount held like a rock, but the top uses a single screw design that just didn't cut it. No matter how much I tightened down the mount, the scope would still slide. So I replaced that mount with this two-piece heavy-duty AccuShot mount. I put the mount with the stop pin, I put that up front in order to take advantage of the new deeper stop pin holes found on this version of the receiver. One of the design changes for this new series of RWS rifles. No more slippage. Everything was finally starting to come together. Shooting the RWS 34 is just like any other break barrel rifle. You cock the barrel, load the pellet, aim the rifle, and squeeze the trigger. Easy, right? Well, not so much. It's time for some more education. I talk a lot about the artillery hold and that you find the balance point, don't grip the gun, just cradle it, etc. Well, toss that out the window, at least with this particular 34. I did not realize how much recoil this gun produced and how critical finding that right hold was going to be. In the end, I found that I had to hold the forearm way up by these front screws rather than cradle it back near the trigger. Some folks may get different results, but this is how I got my 34 to finally perform like it should. This is how it looks. Now, the one part of the rifle that was a dream right from the beginning was the new T06 Trigger. It is exceptional. The second stage may still be just a little long, but it's so light and smooth that it really doesn't matter to me. I believe that you can adjust out some of that second stage, but I was very happy with it right out of the box. In fact, the trigger was the determining factor in pushing forward with the review. It's really exceptional. Our new trigger gauge puts the average pull weight at a mere 1 pound, 3.6 ounces. This is hands down the best trigger in any gun I've tested in this price range. So, how does our 34 perform? Let's take a look at some numbers. The paperwork states that the RWS 34 should get up to about 800 feet per second with lead pellets. In typical fashion, we fell short of that mark by about 9%. This is pretty typical of all spring guns and is a good baseline for what you should expect to actually see versus what may be printed on the box. Starting with the 11.9 grain RWS Hobbies, we had a high of 738 feet per second, a low of 716 feet per second, an average of 724 feet per second, an extreme spread of 22 feet per second, and a standard deviation of 7 feet per second. The average energy was 13.86 foot-pounds. When we moved to a heavier pellet, the numbers continued to slow down just a little bit, but the heavier pellets gave us more energy on target. RWS pellets, the Super Domes, Super Points, and Super H Points seemed to give us pretty decent groups, but the Super H Points gave us the best groups overall. Let's look at the numbers for the Super Domes and the Super H Points. Those were our top two pellets. Here are the results for the 14.5 grain RWS Super Domes. We had a high of 689 feet per second, a low of 683 feet per second, an average of 685 feet per second, an extreme spread of 6 feet per second, and a standard deviation of only 2 feet per second. They generated an average of 15.14 foot-pounds. Surprisingly, at least to me, our most accurate pellet was the RWS Super H Point. It's a 14.2 grain pellet, and it produced the following results. I had a high of 683 feet per second, a low of 675 feet per second, an average of 678 feet per second, an extreme spread of 8 feet per second, and a standard deviation of only 2 feet per second. Our average energy was 14.49 foot-pounds. So here's just a little note. Those numbers are out-of-the-box numbers. I took those before I did any work on the rifle. Now with the gun fully broke in and properly lubricated, Let me go ahead and give you the results, again with the Super H points. I'm getting a high of 690 feet per second, a low of 683 feet per second, an average of 685 feet per second, an extreme spread of 7 feet per second, and a standard deviation, again, of only 2 feet per second. The average energy was 14.81 foot-pounds. The consistency of this rifle is exceptional. With the right pellet and hold, accuracy was also very, very good. The 10-yard groups are very, very tight, but the 20-yard groups look a little larger than they actually are. Each of the 20-yard groups can be covered by a dime though. It's difficult to show the reference to size on the camera, but I wanted to just make an effort to say that they look much larger than they actually are. Let's go ahead and take a look at these groups. So here's my scorecard on the RWS 34. Let's start with the cons. The Model 34 is very hold sensitive. The expensive RWS double lockdown mount worked to eliminate the mount from slipping, but was not significant enough to hold the scope still. The rifle was very, very stiff when cocking and developed issues that required a full teardown and reassembly. This may have been prevented had I just remembered to order the 10 for 10 service, however. The fact that it developed these issues generates a real concern on my part about the potential drop in RWS's quality control. I hope, and from what I've been told, I'm correct in saying that my experience is the exception rather than the norm. I'd still get the 10 for 10 service just to be safe. Now here are the pros for this rifle. It is German-made quality. Despite the problems I had, I could tell just by looking at the internal components that it is definitely not a Chinese import. Simply adding the right amount of M2M paste on the necessary parts solved all the problems. The T06 Trigger is exceptional, blowing away anything in the same price range. At $220, this may be the best value in a .22 caliber Springer. So let's pull all this together in our final summary. If you want a German gun on a Chinese budget, then seriously consider the RWS 34 with the T06. Definitely get the 10 for 10 service if you order one from Pyramid Air, and request that it be tested for a dry compression chamber and overly stiff cocking. This should eliminate you having the same issues I did. If you plan to get a scope, forego the $28 RWS double lockdown mount and get yourself a set of AccuShot heavy-duty rings, and don't be bashful when tightening them down. Expect somewhat of a learning curve with this rifle. It shoots very differently than my other spring guns. Now, with practice and the right pellet, I was very happy with the results. I'd like to take just a moment and thank the folks at Leapers for sending us their new 3-12x40 scope. And of course, the folks at Pyramid Air for providing this rifle and sponsoring this review. If it were not for great sponsors like Pyramid Air, Leapers, and others, we would not be able to bring you these videos. So when you're looking for your next air rifle or your next batch of supplies, be sure to visit www.pyramidair.com or give them a call at 1-888-262-4867. Please make sure to let them know that you heard about them here on Airgun Web. This review certainly shows how important it is to remember to get the 10 for 10 service when ordering. So when you go to purchase your next rifle, remember to select the 10 for 10 service right on the product page. When you're looking for honest, real-world reviews, think Airgun Web, where we tell you the facts, not fluff. I'm Rick Utzer with AirgunWeb.com. Thanks again for watching.